facilitator, the second facilitator you already met, is Karen West. Karen, do you want to say anything?
No, just introducing me is fine.
Okay. So, you know what, Karen, and all this craziness, I forgot to get the candle. So I'll have to go in the other room to get a candle.
I can light the candle.
Okay, great. Because I don't have any place to put it where it's obvious. So that's good if you have it, because you have bookshelves.
Okay, so we light this candle as a symbol of the wisdom in each of us and the wisdom in all of us.
Great, thank you. Glad you have that handy candle there. Okay, so in a moment we're going to move into our circle. Now, saging, as you may have gathered, is a okay. We have a sharing here. So, by the way, if you want to, if you've got that picture big on your screen and everybody else is really tiny, if you take your cursor over to the right side of that picture, you'll see a little bar, a little vertical bar that goes down the whole page. And if you click on it, you can make the picture smaller and make the pictures of everybody else bigger. So everybody isn't little tiny and that picture is gigantic. That's what I just did. So in a moment, we're going to be moving into a circle. Because we're not sitting together in a room, we're going to have a virtual circle. Saging is at heart sort of a sacred journey, sort of a spiritual journey, inner journey. And it's for that reason that we're going to be in a circle, and we're starting with the candle to do some rituals in order to help us get that this is a sacred journey we're on.
Can I interrupt for just a second?
Sure.
Is there any way that we can have the slide without all the other stuff we see around it, Brenda?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I'm not going to be able to do that right now.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead, Randall. Sorry.
Just a second. I'm being asked for help. These strong hands. The stronger hands in the family had to open the cap. Okay, so where was I? So
talking about the circle.
Right. With that in mind, I want to try to get out of this whole screen thing. Okay, there we go. So now we're going to have ourselves in a circle. Now, let's imagine we're sitting in the circle like you see on that slide. Why don't you close your eyes for a moment? Let's close our eyes. Start with ourselves. Be aware of your sensations from your whole body, from head to toe. And become aware of your breathing. Just for a moment, feel the breath coming in and going out of your body as you breathe. Relax your forehead. Just let this forehead soften and relax. Relax your face, your whole face. Relax your neck, shoulders, all the way to your fingertips. Relax the center of your chest. Relax your belly. And relax from thighs all the way to your toes. And then once again, follow from toes all the way up through your body to the top of your head, letting everything relax. And now, from that place, in your mind's eye, imagine us all in a circle together with a table or altar right in the center. In the center, that altar in the center is like the hub. Each of us contributes strength and stability of the circle. So whatever we do in this circle, we'll stay in the circle. And also we strengthen each other, share our wisdom in the circle. So for the rest of today, and we'll do this each week, imagine that we're in the circle. You don't have to keep thinking about it, but just know that we're in the circle together. So when you're ready, slowly open your eyes And here we are together again. So I want you to refer to handout number 1. Do you have a handout? Has a handout been sent to you? Okay, great. Handout number 1, you see that there's some 6 topics which we are going to be covering during this course together. One of the topics is broken up into 3 parts, life review. It's a very important topic. So it's been broken up into 3 different sections. Life review as child, life review as adult, and elderhood. And I want to share what our common intention for our time
Randall,
together. Yes.
Jim is saying he doesn't have the handouts. They were mailed out to you at one point. Okay, well, we'll have to
Why
mail.
don't I read these 6
So Jim,
topics we're going to be
after this workshop, we'll make sure you get the handouts for next time.
Okay. So you can write these down if you want, Jim. So today we're going to be starting with images of aging. What is our image of aging? What is that, and how do those images affect us? Second topic, which we may get started on today, is life review, childhood and youth, part A. We might get there. Next topic, forgiveness. Next topic after that is back to life review, and this is adulthood section, life review of our adulthood. After that, leaving a legacy. Then, a life of service. And finally, embracing our mortality. But because we split the 1 into 3, the third part of that, number 2 of life review, is life review elderhood. And then our shared intention is also on the same page. You can see that, to deepen our journey into saging, which is a vision of aging as a time for deep reflection and spiritual growth. Okay, so we have, Saging International has adopted some agreements that will help us meet our overall intention for our time together. And let me read these agreements to you, and want to make sure that everybody is going to be comfortable with them. The first is confidentiality. Like I said, whatever happens in the circle stays in the circle. We respect the confidence, even better than whatever happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. We respect the confidentiality of what we share with one another concerning personal stories or current issues. Our discussions here are for our personal growth, not for therapy sessions. And we agree to share only what we feel comfortable sharing. You're not forced to share anything that you're uncomfortable sharing. Please don't do that. Any questions? Yvette, was that a question, or you just, no, it wasn't, okay. Second, number 2, we listen with curiosity and compassion, but without judgment. So when we listen deeply, we do that free from the need to analyze, agree, disagree, or even reply. We're not here to fix anyone, but to be a witness. We're just being a witness to another person's thoughts and feelings. As listeners, we keep internal silence. We strive to that, at least, and focus on the other person, rather than rehearsing what we want to say next. So often when somebody else is talking, rather than really listening, we're thinking we want to say next. Let that go. Just really listen, not only to what they say, but to their body language, to the feeling they have. We want to be deeply heard. So in turn, we discipline ourselves to also deeply listen. Any questions? Then, when we speak with intention and brevity. It's a good practice when speaking to go by a motto, which is WAIT, wait. Why? What? W, why am I talking? Consider, does what I say add to the intention of the day and the well-being of the whole group that I'm in, or is it just my own version of what has already been said? So wait is, why am I talking? Just so you're clear that I have something I'm actually saying. Many years ago, I'm a student of meditation for many, many years, and I did a long 40-day silent retreat many years ago. And when I was in the depth of that silence, and my mind got so quiet, and I wasn't talking, and my mind quieted down, I went and sat in the dining room of the ashram, and everybody's in there talking but me. And I was looking at them and hearing what they're saying, and most people just seemed to be talking to talk. They weren't really communicating so much as they were just flapping their mouths for emotional reasons. So, any questions? And finally, we agree to be responsible for our own participation and for the energy we bring to the group. So we want to be conscious of, what am I bringing to this group? How am I being in this group? Am I in a bad mood? Am I putting that in everybody else? Or am I here just being able to be calm and hear and receive and be of service, be hearing other people? But it's not just of service, you're here for yourselves too. So as you hear these agreements, as you read them and hear them, is there anything you'd like to add or change? Are these okay with you? So let me ask you to do this. How about everybody who's comfortable with this and is willing to go by them, raise your hands. We have, Jim, is this not okay with you? I don't see your hand up, Jim. Where's Jim?
Jim, you're muted. We can't hear you.
I'm fine with
Jim?
it. I'm just having trouble with my computer at the moment.
Okay.
But I'm fine with it. Yeah.
Okay, great.
I'd like to say
Okay.
something too. Jaya has also said she doesn't have the handouts. They were sent to you in the email that you got as your welcome email, but we'll send out a new email and it'll have to everyone, and we'll send the handouts, and then you'll be able to print them for the next time.
So what we may need to do is, when we get to the handouts, we can share a screen or something so everybody can see what that handout is.
Oh, I don't think Brenda's prepared for that, but we can tell them what's on the handout.
Okay. Okay, so this workshop is very interactive, and I hope that you will feel comfortable participating as fully as you can. However, at some point you're not comfortable sharing, and it comes to you to share for some reason. Not that you're going to be picked on probably, but just in case it feels like you're supposed to share, please just say pass. That choice will be respected. If there's anything else you need, just let us know. Each of us shares responsibility for attending to the intention and well-being of the entire group. Brenda, our tech host, will keep the chat open so you can communicate with her at any time. And everybody has permission to raise their hand either to the camera or using Zoom. We have a small group, so if you raise your hand even on the camera, we'll probably see you. Sometimes you might have to wave it around a lot to get our eyes, because sometimes it's not easy to see. Or you can use your electronic hand if you know how to do that. If you look at the bottom of your page there, it says reactions, you click there and then you'll see raise hand.
I don't have that.
So let's see. Does anyone have questions? If not, we'll go on to our next topic, to our main topics, beginning the actual topics today.
Actually, you're going to talk about the story of saging first.
Oh, that's right. It's funny that it says, anyway, I think this needs to be fixed a little bit. So the story of saging. Before we begin discussing the six, actually get into the 6 core topics, I'll share a little bit of the history of saging. Have any of you heard the term conscious aging before? Looks like a couple. Some have not. Right, okay. So instead of unconsciously drifting into old age and worrying about and its suffering, the diminishment and loss it can bring, without as something awful, something horrible, and something that's sad and ghastly, the conscious aging movement is creating a new way of looking at spiritual development, life stage of spiritual development, in which we as elders can choose to become more conscious, more whole, and happier than we've ever been, so that our aging into old age doesn't become a catastrophe as we thought it was, as we think it is. Rather, it can be a whole new adventure for us, where we find that there's a whole life waiting for us that we didn't realize. We thought the life was only in our bodies and in the outer world. The first time I came across the conscious aging idea was it's about 4 years ago now, maybe 5. When I was in my late 60s, and I started really feeling down with the aging process, and thinking it's almost over. Too bad, went so fast. And then I came across this term, conscious aging, and I heard about, I saw this book, this wonderful book, From Aging to Saging, A Profound New Vision of Growing Older by Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi. He spent his life as a very influential Jewish leader, but in 1984, when he was turning 60, so he was still pretty young, actually, he noticed that even though his public life was very busy, his body wasn't able to keep up like it used to be. And beneath the surface of his mind, some unhappiness was growing, that he just knew. He was trying to push it aside, but he knew something's not right. I'm losing it. I'm not able to do what I used to do. And so it got to the point where finally he decided to go into a 40-day, you could call it a vision quest, or maybe you could call it a solitude. He went on a 40 days by himself to hope to find a new vision, to be quiet, to read. And out of that, he came up with this new vision. He said, I glimpsed a new vision of elderhood, which proposes a new model of late life development called saging, a process that enables older people to become spiritually radiant, physically vital, and socially responsible elders of the tribe. He's founded the Spiritual Eldering Institute, which was an earlier version of Saging International. And he stressed the importance of community as part of our journey. Spiritual eldering, another term for conscious aging or saging, initially is a search for companions, fellow travelers of this unexplored territory, which share a compatible vision of human growth and lifestyle practices. So we at Saging hope you aren't, if you aren't not already part of the Saging community, that you will join us and we can all go together on this path. Any questions, thoughts? Okay.
So it's my turn.
Your turn.
So now we're going to start talking about our first core topic, images of aging. And I'd like to begin with a poem by John O'Donohue. It's called For a New Beginning. And I think this is a particularly good poem to start out because that's exactly what we're starting. We have a new beginning as we start saging. In out-of-the-way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you were ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noting how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered. Heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent. Wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight, when your courage kindled as you stepped out onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. You can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your heart's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you. So now we're going to go on to talk about what Bill Thomas calls the 3 subcultures of aging. He talks about this in his book, Second Wind, Navigating the Passage to a Slower, Deeper, More Connected Life. So the first group Bill Thomas talks about are the denialists. They want to remain adults forever. They want to be seen as acting young, and they buy into the expensive and lucrative anti-aging industry. Then the second group are the realists. They don't deny that aging occurs, but they also think it's inevitable and unpleasant. The realists equate success with lack of change as they age. Still is a popular word with them. For example, I still run marathons. But the third group are the enthusiasts. They are well aware that aging includes significant decline-related difficulties, but they are unwilling to equate aging with decline. Enthusiasts reject the fantasy of human immortality, and in doing so, they infuse the decades, years, months, days, and hours that remain to them with, as Thomas says, depth, richness, and poignancy. So there are the denialists that want to deny that aging is happening, the realists who know that it's happening, but they still want to think that they're just the same as they were before, and the enthusiasts who embrace this change. So now everybody's going to get an opportunity to introduce themselves to everybody else. And we're going to go around the virtual circle, and I'd like each person to share 4 things. When the slide comes up for this, you'll notice that the first thing I ask you to share is not on the slide. The first thing is, please state your name and the city or region in which you live. Then the next 3 things are, oh, it does say my name is, okay. And then the second is, give the number of years of life experience you have. In saging, instead of saying how old we are, we say how many years of life experience we have. Thirdly, tell us whether you see yourself mostly as a denialist, a realist, or an enthusiast. And then finally, in a sentence or 2, tell us how you're feeling about this growing older. But before we do this, I'd like to tell you another saging tradition that maybe some of you already know. After someone finishes speaking, instead of just going, I'm done speaking, or they're just being dead air and we're not sure if you've stopped speaking, we say, and I have spoken. And we say the and because we're having a continuing conversation. And then after you have said, and I have spoken, the rest of us say, and we have heard. I really like this tradition. So Randall, would you introduce yourself first, and I will introduce myself, and then I'll call on the people who are participating in the workshop to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Randall Krause. I live at this moment in Tucson, Arizona, at least in the winter. Number of years of life experience I have is 71, going very fast towards 72. I'm someplace between a realist and an enthusiast, probably tending more towards enthusiast, but there's still some holding to being a realist that I notice. How do I feel about growing over at this particular moment? I feel actually pretty good. I'm finding the senior life to be pretty darn good, actually. And the journey that I'm able to take here is quite a bit different than what I did before. And I have spoken.
And we have heard. My name is Karen West, and I live in St. Paul, Minnesota. I have 75 years of life experience, and I'm definitely an enthusiast. One of my goals is to leave as a legacy the idea that it's really wonderful to be in the second half of life. I'm happier than I've ever been. So now I'm going to call on 3 people at a time, and so you can unmute yourselves. And then the first person introduce themselves, then the second, then the third, then I'll call on the other people. So Brian, would you start, and then Sandy, and then Steve?
Good day. I'm Brian McCaffrey in St. Paul, Minnesota also. And I have 70 years of experience. And like Randall, I find myself, I have been an enthusiast who is still struggling some with some of the realist issues. I have at the present time friends who are dying, and that is having an impact on me. And so I am okay, I'll stop there. I have spoken, and I have spoken.
And we have heard.
Hi, I'm Sandy Glenn, and I live in Northampton, Massachusetts, which is the western part of the state and a little bit more rural than the Boston area. I have 72 years of life experience. I guess I'd be somewhere between a realist and an enthusiast. And my feelings about aging are a mixture of anxiety, sadness, and interested exploration. And I have spoken.
And we have heard.
We have heard.
So my name is Steve Birch. I've just relocated back to Atlanta, Georgia, after being in Southern California for 15 years. I have 70 years of life experience, and I kind of consider myself to be somewhere between a realist and an enthusiast. I have, when I retired last March actually, instead of calling it retirement, I called it rewirement. Because I was kind of looking to reinvent myself at this stage. I've been following Reb Zalman's work for a long time. And so I was prepared for getting into this phase, and now looking forward to enthusiastically embracing all of this. And I have spoken.
And we have heard.
And we have heard.
We have heard.
Okay, then Becky, Yvette, and Jim.
Hi, everybody. Becky Serpy. I live in Crest Hill, Illinois, which is a very small, I guess, suburb, if you consider it that, of the Chicago area. I have 71 years of life experience. And it's interesting thinking about categorizing myself. I would truly say I'm all 3. Wanting to be more of the enthusiast, being a realist, and probably the majority of me would be a realist, but I deny it at times as well. I'm feeling, I too have mixed emotions about aging, a little bit of fear. There's some curiosity thrown in there. There's joy, there's some determination to try to bring, try to continue to give in some capacity to the world, and to be able to say to my children that life does not end at any certain point until you end physically. So I have spoken.
And we have heard.
And we have,
have heard.
is there a cat or a cow someplace in somebody's room?
That's me. That's
Oh, it's you. Okay.
my aged dog who's 14 and a half.
Okay.
She's a pug
Okay.
and laying beside me snoring. I will keep muted.
All right. I was wondering what that
Yeah,
was.
it's my dog.
I'm Yvette, and I'm from Kilimer, Ireland. And so it's like almost 8 o'clock here. So if I sound a little slow and sleepy, it's because it's getting late. I have 72 years of life experience, meditating for a good 50 years of that, and been in spiritual communities as well. I would label myself an enthusiast, but at the same time, I can accept that change. And so I'm getting used to waking up and just flowing into the unknown of what that space feels like. Sometimes my legs ache, sometimes I feel great, sometimes I feel depressed, and sometimes I don't. And I'm just trying to love my body for that, for recognizing that. And I guess that kind of fulfills the last question. How do I feel about aging? I feel that I'm here. I'm here now, and resisting it isn't going to make me happier. But settling into that new phase in my life feels exciting, feels good. I don't know how I will serve now as being a teacher and a therapist, but we'll see. And I'm very happy to be here with people that are my age instead of with 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds and having to think from a different perspective. So, and I have spoken.
And we have
We
heard.
have heard.
We have heard.
Hello. My name's Jim McGuire. I live in a town called Bournemouth, which is on the southeast coast of the UK. I'm 77. I've got 77 years of life experience. I would say I was an enthusiast that borders on realism. And how do I feel about growing older? Which is a really strange question when I'm thinking about what to answer there. I am the sole survivor of my original family unit. No one in my history has lived past where I'm at. So I've kind of, in a way, I'm curious as to why me and where am I going. And I guess I have spoken.
And we have heard.
And we have heard.
Thank you.
And Jaya and Ruby.
I live in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I have 79 years of life experience, soon to be 80 in June. And I am an enthusiast, as demonstrated by what I've just accomplished. I recently, I've been in my new place, new home, 2 weeks. I had to box up. I had to get about 200 boxes prepared to pack. I packed them, and I have unpacked them, almost all of them, maybe 75 of them. And so when I think about aging, I think because of what I've just accomplished, aging is a myth to me because I feel that what I've done, I can do anything and I can continue to do it for a long time. Even though my body is sore and aching, I contribute it to the physical movement and the muscle tones that I've developed as a result of what I've just done. And I have spoken.
And we have heard.
And
We have heard.
Hi, my name is Ruby Grad. I live in Portland, Oregon. I have 72 years of life experience. I am definitely an enthusiast. Since retiring, I have become busier than ever. A combination of service activities. I have much more time to develop my spiritual life. I think I have to say that in many ways, I love aging. I love being at this point in my life, still having physical and mental capacity, and being able to continue to grow and develop, which wasn't the model that I grew up with. So I'm very happy to be aging and to be aging now. And I have spoken.
And we have heard.
And we have
I
heard.
have heard.
So Rabbi Zalman didn't come up with the terms denialist, realist, and enthusiast, but he did say that however you see yourself, whatever is your attitude is important. He writes in his book, aging itself isn't the problem. It's the images that we hold about it, our cultural expectations that cause our problems. To have a more positive old age, we must change our aging paradigm, the model or blueprint that determines the quality of our experience. Do any of you think that you might be holding on to some images of aging that you would like to change? Well, next we're going to talk about ageism. So one of the reasons that we often don't accept where we are is because of ageism. The term ageism was coined by Robert Butler, who was the first director of the United States National Institute on Aging. It was coined in 1969, which is the same year that the term sexism appeared. Today, there's very little hesitation to tell somebody when they're being sexist, but we rarely ever tell somebody that they're being ageist, because often we don't recognize it. So Ashton Applewhite wrote a book called This Chair Rocks, A Manifesto Against Ageism. I love that title. And she says that ageism is the last socially sanctioned prejudice. She says that bias is the hardest prejudice to let go of because it's a prejudice against myself, my own future, my older self, as inferior to my younger self. Yes, Randall?
I think you said bias, but I think maybe we just didn't hear it. I think you meant to said age bias is the.
Oh, okay. What did I say?
Just bias. So that's all I heard, at least.
Okay.
So I thought that was an important point.
Okay.
That
sorry.
I think you wanted to say. No. Just I think you wanted to say it, so I wanted to make sure that was clear.
So what Applewhite says in her book can be life-changing, and we really recommend that you read the book. But right now, I'm just going to take a little part from the book to share with you. She says, have you ever been told that you look great for your age? If so, how did it make you feel? If you've been told that, did you take it as a compliment? And how often have you said, I don't feel old? Applewhite says that when she started studying and writing about aging, she didn't see the harm in comments like that. But as her consciousness was raised, she realized she was equating feeling young with feeling bad. And feeling old, no, the other way around. Feeling young was bad, and feeling old, feeling young equated to feeling good, and feeling old equated to feeling bad. Too many words there. She says that we are so steeped in age denial, we don't notice that such equations are flawed. The question is not how old we feel, but how we feel about old, or just not being young anymore. So Applewhite suggests if this is going to change, we have to recognize society's and our own ageism and push back. So now we're going to get into small groups of, well, 3 or 4. Let's say we have 8 people. So we'd have 2 groups of 3 and 2. Wait a minute. So we've got 8 people.
We could have 2 groups of 4.
We can just do 4 and 4, right? Okay, so we'll have 2 groups of 4. And I would like you to I threw myself off when I lost my train of thought there. I'd like you to talk about this, about ageism. Is there any ageism? Do you feel there's any ageism in your life? And do you feel that maybe sometimes you are equating feeling young with feeling good and feeling old with feeling bad? So Ruby, can you put everybody into their groups? And there will be a notice that'll tell you when there's 60 seconds left, so we don't stop you in the middle of a sentence.
And Karen, how long do you want them to be in the group?
For 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay.
Have fun.
Bye-bye. Karen, after I mentioned that, I was worried that maybe I didn't in any way mean to embarrass you or anything. I thought
Oh, no, it
maybe
didn't
that was
embarrass me
embarrassing.
because that
Okay,
word
good.
wasn't all that important to me. So,
Okay.
that's fine. I do want to mention one thing though, is we were behind before we even started, and then we started late. I hope you enjoyed having your discussion in your small group. So I'd like to end this discussion by mentioning 2 important studies that help us to be more enthusiastic and positive about age. Becca Levy, who quotes, you'll often find that she quotes this information. You'll find it in lots of books, but she's just recently come out with a book about it. And the book is called Breaking the Age Code: How Your Beliefs About Aging Determine How Long and Well You Live. What she discovered in the research is that people who have positive images of aging tend to live 7.5 years longer than those who have negative internalized images. And then another piece of research is the U-curve of happiness, which shows that people have better mental health at the beginning and the end of their lives. Surveys have shown that happiness increases after middle age, and this pattern shows up around the globe. Data show that on average, life satisfaction drops during midlife, but begins its recovery around age 50, reaching its peak at the end of life. And there's another book called Life Gets Better: The Unexpected Pleasures of Growing Older, in which the author, Wendy Lusbader, refers to being older as a burgeoning opportunity. I love to quote that. In the beginning of her book, she talks about how she's with a bunch of young people, and she mentions how hard it was to be young and how wonderful it is to be old. And apparently the young people came up to her after she said that and said, "Thank you for saying that. People always say to me, this is the most happy you'll ever be in your life. And I'm not so happy. I've got all kinds of things that are stressing me out." So I love that U-curve of happiness too. So at this point, we're going to take a break just for 5 minutes. So I appreciate if you come back quickly. And then Randall will start talking about transitions. Why don't you go ahead and start, Randall?
Okay.
Well,
Welcome back.
There she is.
There you are. Okay. Okay, so the next concept we're going to talk about that's very helpful as we move into the second half of life is the idea of transitions. Important book on this subject is Transitions, Making Sense of Life's Changes by William Bridges. It's a popular book. It's been republished many times. The most important concept is that he presents is that change is situational, but a transition is psychological. I'm going to repeat that. Change is situational, but transition is psychological. So there are three stages in a life transition. The first stage is the stage of ending or letting go. It's a very important state. Often people try to move on in life without first letting go of the previous stage. But if you previous place, but if you don't let go, you can't really make a transition. You're still in the past. To make a transition, you have to do the inner work. That's why it's psychological. You have to do the psychological work and become a different person. This is why Bridges says a transition is psychological and change is situation. For example, if you just move from one job to another, from one partner to another, and you don't grow in the process, you don't make nothing changes inside, you've only made a change. Then after you complete, or at least partly to some extent complete this first stage of letting go, you move to the neutral zone, quote, neutral zone. This stage is also crucial. It's when it can be very uncomfortable, when you feel kind of lost perhaps and isolated, and you might want to get through this stage as fast as possible, but you can't do that. You can't do that if you really want to have a successful transition. There's that period of discomfort that comes with being out of what's familiar. Then finally, after you have let go and you've done your inner work and you've sat in the discomfort for a while, you can move to the third stage, the new beginning. We've all made such transitions in life, going into and then out of school, leaving the parental home, job transitions, perhaps marriage, divorce, childbearing, empty nesting. Any questions about these three stages or about how transition works? Do you have any questions about what I just spoke about? One of the people who writes about the second half of life. Oh, okay, Sandy.
Can you give me an example of what you mean by doing the letting go psychological work?
Psychological work is, when you start.
I know what psychological work is. I was looking for an example of maybe from your own experience.
We're going to talk about our own experience in a couple of minutes. Can you hang on to that for a couple of minutes?
Yes.
Yeah. So Richard Rohr says in his book, Falling Upward, A Spirituality for the Two Halves of Life, he says, on the first page, a journey into the second half of our own lives awaits us all. Not everybody goes there, even though all of us get older. And some of us get older than others. Our, quote, further journey, end quote, is a well-kept secret for some reason. Many people do not even know there is one. There are too few who are aware of it, tell us about it, or know what it is, know that it is different than the journey of the first half. In a minute, I'm going to give you some time to think about where you are in this process of transitioning into the second half of life. But first, I'd like to give you an example where both Karen and I are going to give you examples from our own lives. I'd feel be able to do a little bit better in my job telling my story if you told yours first. Karen, are you okay with that?
Sure. I'd like to try and answer Sandy's question too. Was Sandy's right?
Yeah.
Sandy, you asked the question?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so
you
what happens a lot of time is when people change from doing one thing to doing another, they think they've made a transition, but they're just the same person. So if you, like, for example, when I decided I didn't want to be a high school teacher anymore, I ended up, until I could find another job, I did substitute teaching, thinking that would just tide me over, but it made it harder for me to make the transition because I was still seeing myself as a high school teacher. So I had to let go of that image of myself in order to start thinking of myself as something different. And then in that neutral zone, I was there for a couple of years. And at one point I said to my daughter, I think maybe I'm not going to find this new job that I want. She encouraged me that I would. And finally I did when I became a career counselor. So that was my new beginning. Does that make it make more sense?
You're muted, I
Yes.
think. Okay, go
Because
ahead.
you got to let go of that first image you've got of yourself in order to find your way to the new one.
That's helpful. So it's letting go of an image.
Yes, who you thought you were.
Okay,
Because as long
thank
as
you.
you're still that same person, you're not going to make a transition. You're just changing your situation.
Sure. Thank you.
Does that make sense? Okay,
Yeah.
so I feel I moved into the second half of my life when I retired. After I retired, I found out that my life was much less busy. In fact, I had whole days where I didn't have anything absolutely planned. But over time, so I thought I was not being productive. And I felt like I should be doing something with my life. But over time, I realized that being less busy was a really good thing. It gave me the opportunity to reflect and to contemplate. And now I'm very busy again. But whenever I get too busy, I stop and say, wait a minute. Am I getting busy like I was back when I had a job and I had a family? And maybe I need to slow down a little bit so I'm not rushing through the experiences I'm having now in the second half of life. Does that make sense? Okay. And Randall, you want to share yours?
Okay, so I was working as attorney, and then I worked as a personal coach, and then at a certain point, I started serving my parents, and during that period, my dad had a stroke, and I ended up having to take over his whole business, take care of them, and I was extremely busy. That was my career for almost 10 years of running the family business. I suddenly found myself being a businessman, and when Dad died, that's when things really started to change for me, because up until then I was working. I always thought, what am I going to do with my life? And while I was taking care of my folks, I was thinking I'm doing this for them, but suddenly they weren't there anymore. And who am I doing this for now? Because I kept it spinning. The wheels kept turning even after I kept running the business. And I started thinking, wait a minute, who am I doing this for now? I don't need to do this for myself anymore. I've got enough saved away, and this is not really what I want to do for the rest of my life. That's when things started to change, and I started opening up to going inside instead of doing. Instead of what am I going to do when I grow up, it's like, what am I going to do now? And it was a turn to more to being than to doing. It was more being here than looking toward the future of what's coming next. So that's when I really started to get into moving into the second part of life, when it was a total change in my whole outlook on what am I doing here? Why am I here? And what's my life about?
Randall, I liked what you said about moving from doing to being too.
Yeah, that was the main thing. So now you're going to have a chance to do some journaling, to take your own consult with yourself about your move into the second half of life. How many of you have journaled before? Anybody? Okay, several. Could a few of you have journaled, say something about what that experience meant to you and how you benefited from it? Can anybody be willing to do that, to volunteer how journaling has benefited you? Yeah, it's Ruby.
By writing things down, I found that what I wrote led to new ideas that I don't think might have arisen had I not written down what I was already thinking.
Mm.
So I think there's a creative aspect that can emerge in in journaling, in writing things down, that new ideas can emerge.
Mhm.
And that happened, yeah, that happened for me. And I've
Thank you.
spoken.
She's great.
And we have heard.
heard. Brian?
And I totally the same experience as Ruby. And then it is a sense of putting it out. So most of the time it's unexamined, and when it's written down, you're able to look at it and say, I want to look at it from different angles. Or I see things and I go, I don't want that. I want to do it differently, or something like that. There's a sense of either something becomes more concrete or it's able to be let go of.
Great.
And
Anybody else want to share? Karen, you want to share?
I'd like to add a quote that I really like. It's, how do I know what I think until I see what I say? But I like, how do I know what I think until I see what I write?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're going to,
Well, Steve just raised his hand.
oh, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add one thing, and that is that I find that for me, it's an awareness. So much of life is like on autopilot, and we just kind of go through the motions, do all this stuff without really having a chance to stop and reflect on it. And so journaling, to the extent, and I'm a regular daily journaler, but as part of another practice that I'm involved in. But it forces me to stop and at least reflect on what's happened and where it might be going for me. Whereas otherwise, I think I just would have skated right through it and kind of wondered what happened to me. And I've spoken.
And we have heard.
And we have heard. So Steve, it kind of slows you down and brings it right in front of your face. So you have to actually get a chance to contemplate it rather than just rushing on past it. Take notice of it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to take some time to journal now. We're going to look at handout number 3. Brenda, could you possibly put that on the screen? So there are some questions on there. If you could take some time, answer the questions. You have 15 minutes. Is that right? We give them 15 minutes for this?
Yeah, and they don't have to answer every question, but
you don't have to answer every question, but do it, or find the question you really, even just one question, find one you really love, that you really get into. You don't have to rush past them just to do them all. So we'll start with 15 minutes, and then you can feel free to turn your camera off or leave it on. And when you come back, be sure to turn it on so we know you're back, and we'll look for you in 15 minutes.
One person speaks for 5 minutes and the other person listens and doesn't interrupt or ask questions, or so the one person speaks for 5 minutes and the other person deeply listens. And then you change places and the other person speaks for 5 minutes and then the other person listens. Does anybody have any questions about that? I just realized that we hadn't written down that we were going to tell you that.
No, I missed that.
Well, this will be the first dyad we're doing. We did a small group first.
Sorry, I didn't quite get the instructions there.
Okay, so one person will have 10 minutes in the dyad. We're going to do this next. And one person just speaks about their experience without the other person interrupting, about when they think they went into the second half of life, what it's been like for them, for 5 minutes. Then we switch places and the other person does the same thing for 5 minutes. Okay, great.
One is a listener, one is a speaker.
Yes, exactly. And you get to speak without anybody interrupting you, so you really get to follow your train of thought. So Brenda, can you put people into dyads?
10 minutes, Karen?
10 minutes, yes.
Okay,
so in your dyad, in your dyad, talk about what came up for you during that exercise. What did you realize about where you are in the second half of life and all that sort of thing? You get time to share your experience.
So what we're going to do now is going to have a chance to share a little bit of wisdom or insights that you gained from your dyads. So I'd like to ask you to, if you're comfortable doing so, to volunteer to share a piece of wisdom that came from what you said. Don't share what somebody else said or their story necessarily. We don't want people to, we don't want to be telling the people, so let them tell. But share something that's a piece of wisdom, a nugget of wisdom that you got. So please go ahead.
Or from your journaling, or it could have come up in your journaling too.
So feel free to pop in.
Jim raised his hand.
Yeah, I really, I was cut short with my dyad with Steve, but I got some. I listened to what he had to say, and I really felt that what he had to share was helpful, and it kind of put me in a better frame of mind about what I was thinking about in my own circumstance. So I just wanted to share that.
Can you be a little more specific about what you learned?
Yeah, what did you learn, or what did he share, so we know what you're talking about?
I mean, he seemed to he was talking about work experience, and how he'd left and then come back to it, and how that was good, and things like retirement. These are things that I hadn't thought of talking about, as far as employment benefits like state benefit and private pension, only because unfortunately my example of that hasn't been very good. I mean, when Maggie Thatcher was Prime Minister in the UK, she told us all burgeoning baby boomers to opt out of SERPs, which is the government pension scheme, and go private, which is I did, but unfortunately the company I chose was called Equitable and Life, and if you know anything about the pension business or finance, they were a big they went bust and caused billions of people heartache, and I was unfortunately one of them. So you know, and I never thought of mentioning any of that in my dyad, but Steve did, and I was pleased to hear that he's got positive feedback, and I found that encouraging. You know, so that's my share. Thank you. I have spoken.
And we
have heard.
We have heard.
Sandy.
So what I've learned and I appreciate from today is learning about the 3 stages, and in particular the neutral zone. I wrote down feeling lost, isolated, wanting to go through it fast, discomfort with the unfamiliar, and so it's lovely to learn about that, because I'd probably say I'm in the letting go, half in the letting go and half in the neutral zone stage. And it sort of feels like, oh, so this is usual. This is what people go through. I was feeling queer. I was feeling weak. And instead, with this information, I now feel like I have somewhat of a guide map, or this is normal. So thank you. I have spoken.
And we have heard.
And we have heard.
We have heard.
Who else? Am I hearing crickets?
Maybe it's time to move on.
Well, I'll share what I came up with in a few seconds. What I realized is that I'm constantly in a letting go, neutral zone, and enthusiastic point. For me, it's a constant movement. And so I'm always letting go. I'm always in the neutral zone. And I'm always into new territory and having something new.
You make a lot of transitions.
I'm constantly in transition. So my life is about. Anybody
Thank
else
you
want
for
to share?
that. Well, I just want
Mhm.
to say thank you for that. I echo that as well. That constant movement and that constant transition. However, I would add, Randall, that you can't make those transitions without a level of depth of emotional and psychological awareness. So, I think kudos for that for people who, and I believe we're probably all in that category, or we wouldn't be here today. That awareness of what it means to be moving into saging and aging.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
this has been really helpful to me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Steve?
Yeah, I was just going to throw in that I've just gone through the move, as I mentioned, from one coast to the other, and that was somewhat unexpected. Certainly happened a whole lot faster than I planned it to. And I thought that I was basically managing a transition, and that I knew where I was going, and that everything was going to, I had all this stuff planned out. And the move kind of blew it all up. So now we had to figure out, what was really important going into that other phase that I didn't even know was there. I thought I was just going to basically transition from one state of being and one kind of purpose to another kind of purpose, and then move on from there. And now I'm finding it's proving to be much more difficult than all of that. So I'm expecting to spend more time in the neutral zone than I thought.
That's have you spoken?
I have spoken. Thank you.
And we have heard.
You've heard.
Thank you. Brian.
The big transition that started me in all this really was one, it was work and meeting old people, but two, it was my own health. And that I think that encountering our final days, recognizing our end, is a great catalyst for going inside and learning about ourselves. And it has been, as I have not been a good one in taking care of my body. I'm trying more now, but it has brought me this far, and I've been near death a few times now. But I'm a survivor, and that's an interesting thing when I do life review, and I find that life review is so wonderful as I try to integrate all the pieces. And I have spoken.
And we have heard.
One thought I had, and I'll just be a moment. It was what somebody else kind of said, and I just want to repeat it because it's meaningful to me. As we go through our life and we keep being told we should have it together, we should know what we're doing, and we should feel confident and comfortable. But when we're going through a transition, we don't. But if we don't go through the transition, we're never going to get anywhere. So we have to be willing to feel out of control and not competent. And that's part of moving towards mastery of anything is, if you start learning to play guitar, I started learning to play guitar years ago, and I didn't know anything, and it's so difficult, but and you have to go through so long like that until you start getting a little bit more comfortable. But if you keep growing, you're going to keep going into those that have to let go and go into those neutral zones. So the more comfortable you can get with not feeling like you're not together, the better. Not that you should always be feeling that way, because who wants to always feel that way? But you can maybe expect to feel that way more than maybe you originally thought you would. I have spoken.
We have heard. You just made me think of something. I've heard a lot of older people say they thought by the time they got to this age, they'd have all the answers. They'd know exactly who they were and what their life was about, and they're amazed to find out that that's not true.
I have the saying, don't trust anyone with the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think that's the end of my bit here, isn't that right?
No, you have just a little bit more.
Where am I harvesting? Um,
Okay,
so I'd like to end, you
Go
want to
ahead.
go ahead with that?
No, you go ahead. You found it.
I'd like to end our discussion of this core topic, images of aging, with a quote from Rabbi Zalman Schachter, Shalomi's book, From Aging to Saging. Elderhood offers us the wonderful opportunity to complete our lives triumphantly. That's a big word, huh? But how many of us accept the offer? Most people want to arrest their youth at one point, say at 42, in the prime of life. But we cannot arrest the process of life without stopping it. So we experience a deep sense of frustration when we fail at this impossible task. We are failures in remaining middle-aged, but we are not failures in becoming 65, 85, or older. Do you love hearing? What do you think about Reb Zalman saying that we can complete our lives triumphantly instead of just becoming more and more diminished and seeing ourselves as victims of old age? We can choose to complete our lives and can complete them triumphantly. Very powerful words.
And I think that's the challenge of saging, actually. It's so many people just think, well, that's it, I'm just going to peter out and that's going to be it. And he's basically throwing down the gauntlet and saying, no, there's another way to do this. And I certainly do have appreciated that for some time.
And we're the first people that have been able to do that. People
Mhm.
didn't used to live to be 80 and 90.
Not many.
And beyond.
If you,
Yeah, very few.
I invite you to go on YouTube and look up Reb Zalman and look at some of his videos when he was in his 80s before he died, and see what a beautiful being, glowing being he became in his last years of his lives. Not that he wasn't great, beautiful before that, but something very special he became.
I love
Sandy.
the quote from Carl Jung that according to evolution, we wouldn't grow this old if it wasn't important to the species.
Mm-hmm. Have you spoken? Are you finished?
Oh,
have you spoken?
I have spoken.
We have heard. Sandy?
Thank you for sharing that. I do really like that, because my own view of things is that ultimately we're spiritual beings, we're spirits embodied, we're embodied spirits, and that for me, the second half of life is about I'm struggling for the words, but it's a time to realize our that we are spirit embodied, and that would, for me, be the most I don't know. I'm struggling for word, but for lack of a better word, most important thing we can do. So I do view it that way, but only conceptually, mentally. Most of me is conditioned and operating from the unconscious and scared of the second half of life. But philosophically, I see it that way, and that ultimately the end of life should be triumphant. And I have spoken.
And we have heard. Thank you for sharing. Okay. So now we go back to you, Karen.
Okay, well, some of you have mentioned life review, and that's our next core topic that we're going to start on. We have 20 minutes left until the workshop ends, and I'd like to tell you a little something about this workshop. This is a brand new workshop, and it's a very big workshop. It takes a lot of time, and at this point, we don't exactly know how we're going to divide it and where we're going to end up. So I'm going to just stop when we get to 3:15, rather than having stopped at the end of a particular topic, because I want to get as far as we can, because we probably won't get to the end at the when the 7 days are over. So I don't have a preconceived place of where we're going to stop. So if it seems odd, that's why. Anyone have any questions about that? Really happy that we have this new workshop to offer, and we'll get better at making it smooth.
I think it's going well, actually, so far.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now we're after talking about images of aging, we're going to talk about the first section of life review, which is youth. And we've already talked about the box of unlived life back in the last section. And Rabbi Zalman says that we really can avoid being stuck in this box of life if we do life review. So he says that in the past, we're worried about our painful failures, our broken relationships, our missed opportunities, and our shame and guilt. And in the future, we're afraid to look towards mortality, mental diminishment, physical challenges, and limitations and loss. But I was mentioning to Randall that we have another slide in Saging for this box of unlived life that I really like, but I didn't have access to it, where the fellow is actually drawing his own box. So hopefully that'll be a part of this workshop in the future. So one of the problems with this work is that this life review work is we normally look back on our lives as nothing but a chaotic jumble of experiences. We don't know how to make sense of it all. It may even feel like a scary, somewhat dangerous thing to attempt. But actually, doing life review can be very empowering. There are many reasons why this is true, but I'd like to share one of them with you. As Rabbi Zalman says, it's because in our immature and half-baked ways, we jump to conclusions in our youth that we have not re-examined in our maturity. Re-examining the conclusions we came to in our youth can change the way we see our past. To help you get started thinking about this, I'd like to share one experience that I had that I now see very differently than when I actually had the experience. So when I was in 6th grade, the popular kids started having boy-girl parties, is what we called them. And I wasn't in that clique, so I didn't go to those parties, but I thought they sounded like fun, so I decided to have one of my own. And everybody came to the party, and they all had a good time, but they just still didn't include me in their parties later. And I always figured what that experience meant was that I wasn't cool. Now I look back on it and I go, I can't believe I was so brave to do that. So I see that experience very differently than when I actually had it. And that may be a minor experience, but there are some really major experiences that we may see differently now when we go back to re-examine them. So that's one of the wonderful things about life review. Remember, it's that helps us age triumphantly. So I'd like to share a quote with you from Ron Pevney, one of the gurus in Saging, who wrote the book Conscious Living, Conscious Aging. And this is what he says about life review. Life review is the foundation for much of the inner work of conscious eldering. Life review helps us become aware of aspects of our past that may seem like vague images in our memory, consigned to the realm of the unconscious, but they continue to exert a powerful influence on our lives. They may be experiences of loss that we've never fully grieved, of wounds that have not healed, of resentments that have not been forgiven, all of which sap our energy, close our hearts, and dull our light as we age. These may also be experiences of joy, compassion, idealism, strength, heroism, and divine support, perhaps forgotten, that can serve as sources of inspiration, reminding us that what is best in ourselves and in our life. I like that Ron Pevney quote. So now I'm going to tell you how Rabbi Zalman suggested we do life review. And if you have the book From Aging to Saging, you'll find this in the back of the book in the exercises, how you do this. So he suggests that we divide our lives into 7-year cycles. And the reason he suggests we do this, instead of looking at our life just as a whole, we divide it into 7-year segments, is because he says, in general, memory becomes sharper and clearer when it's associated with partition time. Focusing on specific periods of time acts like a magnet in the psyche, bringing awareness of all the filings or experiences that we need to recover from our past and truly harvest the wisdom of our lives. and I've had many participants doing life review, and they always agree with this, that if you just divide it into, the first segment would be 0 to 7 years, and he puts a month on each of these cycles. So that would be January. And then 8 to 14 is February. And you keep doing this until you get to 78 to 84 is December. And since now people so often live to be 85 and above, we call that Jubilee years. So if you would take out handout 4, those of you that have it, it's called My Youth in 7-Year Cycles. If you don't have it, I'll explain to you what's on it. So for the purposes of this workshop, we're dividing the life review into 3 sections: youth, adulthood, and elderhood. Today, we're going to focus on youth, which is, I'm calling from birth to 21, the youth. Now, if you have your handout there, you'll see that on the left side, it has the cycles, and then it has 3 columns that you divide it into. Oh, great, she's going to show us. And it's obviously the wrong way, but so you can see that horizontally, or is that vertical? That's vertical. Vertically, you can see that you divide it into the 7-year segments. Then horizontally, one section is significant moments and events. And the next one is people who have influenced me. And the third one is contributions to the continuum of my life. So what you do is you look at January, think of all the experiences you can that you had from 0 to 7 years of age. And then think of all the people that influenced you when you were from between 0 and 7 years of age. And then finally, what did that all mean? So like, say, for example, I put my boy-girl party experience in, it wouldn't be 0 to 7, but it would be wherever it was. And then I'd say the significant experience was I decided to have a boy-girl party because I wanted to experience that. And then people who have influenced me. My uncle really influenced me. And then for the continuum, I'm sorry, it has to be somebody that has to do with that 0 to 7, I think. So I wouldn't have put that in. But the continuum of my life is that I went on thinking that I was shy and that this was a problem. And I realized later that I wasn't as shy as I was just not sure I would be accepted. So I didn't always put myself out like I did that time. So if figure out what your experiences are during that time, what people influenced you during that time, and then how that contributed to the continuum of your life. Does anybody have any questions on how to do this? Now, even if you have the handout, I would suggest that you don't necessarily use it. I would suggest you take a piece of paper, a whole piece of paper for just 0 to 7, and another whole piece of paper for 8 to 14. Because hopefully you're not going to just do this in the workshop. You're going to want to go back and add things to it. So you can have a bigger space. Randall?
Aaron, since we only have a few minutes left, rather than sending people out to work on this right now, I'm wondering if you want to give it to them as homework.
That's what I'm going to do.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. So does everybody understand what I'm saying, Brian, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, you've gone from youth, birth to 21, back to 0 to 7, and I'm getting confused.
Okay, so we're dividing our life into 3 sections. And today we're just going to start talking about our youth. So it's only the cycles that go up to 21.
Okay.
0 to 7.
So it's
7 to
0 to
14.
7, 8 to 14, 15 to 21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, now got you. Okay. All right.
Does that make it clear?
Yeah. And
Okay,
don't worry about it. Don't worry about the other 2. I mean, you
No,
did
we'll do
mention
that
it.
later. We'll do that
All right.
later. We're just going to
Okay.
talk about our youth at this point.
All
And don't try to think about whether something belongs. Should I say this? Put down anything you think of and jump around from the cycles. Don't spend all your time just in 0 to 7. You know, like when you're doing 0 to 7, if you think of something that happened when you're 13, put that in that place. We're just trying to start our memories coming to us. Does everybody understand what I'm asking you to do? Has anybody already done this in saging or in something else? Ruby and Jaya, you want to say a little something about it? About what you like about it or how your experience has been?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this was life changing to do life review this way. And because of the final column, the contributions to the continuum of my life, because it really made me think about what I gained, what the gift was. I think Reb Zalman even uses that language of what was the gift of this experience to me. So it changed my view. I mean, I was deeply conditioned growing up to view the world through a victim lens. And doing this really turned that around to what was the gift of this experience rather than how was I a victim of this experience. And it also then fostered many more positive memories than I would customarily go over in reviewing my life. So I'm a major, major fan of doing life review in this way.
Thank you, Ruby. How about you,
Yeah.
Jaya? Would you like to say something?
Yes, this was probably the highlight of my training with saging, was to go back and remember and recap um all of it. Now it was I found the easy way for me to do it is put I would put start out with my birth, the year, and I went all the way the years up to I wrote them on a long sheet of paper all the way up to my current age. So then because I connect mostly not so much my age, but the year. So I was able to see in 1968 how old I was and what I was doing at that time. So that may be helpful, is to write down the years from the birth all the way and then go back and review. But it's great to go back and just remember those areas. So yeah, it's memorable.
Yeah, what Jay is saying is really important that I didn't think to say that if you think about the years, I've had participants who think about how old their children were. They remember things according to what was going on with their children too. So whatever way you can bring your memories out, that's great. Did someone else have their hand up?
Yeah,
Jim?
yeah, I have to. One of the things I've done a lot of work on this sort of thing. Not so much in aging, Salman Rushdie's work, but in trauma related, because there's been a lot of trauma in my life, certainly in my childhood. And I'll do it, but I'll be reluctant to share it. I just want to point that out.
Oh, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Brian?
I was going to mention Connie Zweig's work on the shadow of aging, and that's really been a part of, as I've done my review as to what created my shadow.
Because he's talking about the book by Connie Zweig, who is actually a certified saging leader, among many other things that she's done, called From Role to Soul, I think it's called. It's a very good book. So now, since we're coming to the end, as Randall suggested, I'm going to ask you to do this for homework. So you'll get to spend more time on it. And then I'd like to come back next week, and at the beginning of our time together, we'll do a little bit of sharing about that. Okay, so everybody willing to do a little bit of homework?
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, I'd just like to share one more poem with you before you go off to do that. And this is another poem by John Donahue, which I took from the book The Grace in Aging by Kathleen Dowling Singh. I didn't get it from a John O'Donohue book. And so if you're interested in finding it in the Grace in Aging, it's on page 241. It's a wonderful day when one is finally able to stand before the long, deep mirror of one's own reflection and view oneself with appreciation, acceptance, and forgiveness. On that day, one breaks through the falsity of the images and expectations which has blinded one's spirit. One can only learn to see who one is when one learns to view oneself with the most intimate and forgiving compassion. So I would like you to take that off with you, to think about how you do this life review will help you to see yourself with more compassion. Anyone want to add anything for the benefit of the group before we end? Randall, is there something you might like to say?
I'd just like to take us out of our, do a brief imagining thing to take us out of our circle for the week.
Okay, then let's thank Brenda at this point. Brenda, can you turn your camera on so we can say thank you for being our tech host?
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
Does anyone have anything else before Randall takes us off? Great, go ahead, Randall.
Okay, so once again, close your eyes. If you're comfortable doing so, be aware of your whole body from head to toe and become aware of your breathing. Just feel everything, just feel what's in your body. We covered a lot today. You may have some different feelings in there than you had when we began. Bring your awareness to the theater in your head, the big theater in your head, and just visualize us all sitting in our circle. And we can bow to each of us who have shared and willing to be a little bit naked in front of all the rest of us, at least bare our souls, and to do the growing, to do with the discomfort it takes to grow. So now we'll blow out the candle. We'll put out the candle for this week. Dissolve our sacred circle. And when we open our eyes, we can do a little bow to each other if you want. Honor all those who are here scattered together, who are here together sharing with one another. Thank you all so much.
See you next week.
See you next week, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.